We often talk about working on this concept of a 360 breathing pattern to get our diaphragm to descend in a balanced way like an umbrella, and that helps our pelvic floor function and our ab function. Sometimes it can be hard to coordinate that because it can feel opposite of what our body is naturally doing at this point, depending on rib cage position, pelvis positioning, habits, patterns, all that kind of good stuff with it. One easy trick for feedback is using my hands. So what I'll do is I'm going to lay down on my back, and I'm going to go ahead and have myself into a position where I'm a little bit more kind of tucked and rounded to make it easier to breathe into my back. That's a little bit more restricted, harder to breathe into, and a little bit more compressed on my front side. So I'm going to lay on my back with my head on a pillow and my legs up on something. And the idea is to kind of explore to position and set up and see what's going to be best for you. So as I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one hand and I'm going to place it across my ribs. So with this hand, I'm really trying to reach as best I can without letting that shoulder come off, so I can monitor the front of my ribs as well as the side and even my back. My other hand, I'm going to place on my lower abs. So what we're thinking of here is we're thinking about a top-down inhale, getting the diaphragm to initiate the movement as it pulls down, rib cage expands, diaphragm will then descend into our organs that will gently put a little bit of pressure onto our pelvic floor and make our abs descend. What we want to make sure of is that your abs and pelvic floor don't win the race before that rib cage expands. You also want to make sure that the front side doesn't win the race compared to the back. On the exhale, you're then going to think a bottom-up exhale, where you're feeling the lift and rise of your pelvic floor. Lower abs will kind of lift and sink, and then your ribs are going to come around and towards each other and come back as your diaphragm lifts up into your ribs. So with that one, we're making sure a lot of the time what ends up happening is people go to exhale and they'll do too much pressure from the top, creating pooching in their lower abs and pressure down onto the pelvic floor. So giving yourself this hands-on feedback can help you figure out where you have to direct more energy and effort towards, maybe where you have to keep a little bit of tension to help those stickier areas let go. So what it's going to look like here is I'll do it this way and then I'll switch hands so you can kind of see the other way. But I'm going to inhale through my nose. Think about my top hand expanding first into my sides, into my back, into the ground. And then feeling that bottom hand expand so that your hands are kind of lifting equally together. And then on the exhale, feeling that bottom hand lift up first, as then that top hand lowers back down, and you're feeling everything sink down towards the ground together as one unit. So I'll go through a breath here. And then I'll show you this way. So I'm monitoring across here. And what you can really see from this point is this shadow here. We're looking for that space to fill in or darken with that inhale. We don't want your ribs to lift up and that back to arch. So you're going to inhale thinking of that area expanding. And then exhale, thinking about sinking into that space. And again, not lifting off away from the ground. So what might happen is when you first go to inhale, the tendency might be to arch up with those ribs or have all the breath go from the belly and not from the ribs itself. So you maybe have to keep a little bit of tension in those abs to get more mobility into those ribs first. And then when you go to exhale, the tendency might be to crunch down from here and create that pooch in those lower abs and that belly and pressure onto that pelvic floor. So it might mean you actually have to dampen down what type of exhale you're doing and play around with more of that hot exhale, nice and easy, visualizing those ribs not just pulling down, but wrapping around and towards each other, maybe adding another pillow underneath your head to help those ribs passively be dropped down with it. But feeling out where you have to play with that tension, where you have to kind of like stop the system a little bit so that more areas can expand. And it's that balanced 360. And then on that exhale, where you have to think about maybe, okay, all my exhale is those lower abs and just letting those ribs kind of melt in towards each other to create that balance sinking with it. Thinking about that we're working as this is working on improving the flow and energy and where that lengthening comes from, where that contracting comes from, so that it can just be a balanced and happy system with it versus like forcing it. So take a couple moments there, using those hands for feedback, looking in a recording or a mirror to watch what that back is doing, and just kind of think about that nice 360 inhale, nice 360 exhale, full and complete in each direction. And then you can take those connections and patterns into other movements and think about, okay, when I go to do ab work or push-ups or a squat or something like that, where did I have to think about keeping a little bit more tension? Where did I have to direct a little bit more of that breath on that inhale? What did my exhale feel like to then be able to get more of that balanced exhale versus one area dominating over and over other? But hopefully that gives you a little bit of awareness to build into your practice of trying to get that nice movement and pattern going in your diaphragm, ribs, and pelvic floor.